Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. Welcome. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I have Amy Dempster here with me, and I'm so excited to jump into the conversation with her. Amy helps in understanding the healing power of the earth. What began as openly sharing her spiritual journey on her popular blog, Following Hawks, has become a resource for others wanting to learn how to communicate with nature and share their own unique healing gifts with the earth. Amy leads the Earth Tenders Academy and is a host of the podcast Earthkeepers. Amy, thank you so much for meeting me here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah. So I have lots of questions for you, and I'm just kind of tuning into where I want to start. This is the classic, what do you do question. I would love to have you just share in your words from your perspective, I guess, if we can wipe away how to make it sound easy and connect and make it easy for people to understand. What do you describe the things you do as?
Yeah, I think in the most simplest sense, it's really just to help people reconnect with nature and the healing energies of the earth and all of the things that are inherent to being a human being that our current culture just really has forgotten or left behind at some point for all of the glittering promises of living in a technological world. And so, I like to think that while I still live in the technological world myself, as most of us do, that there's a lot of opportunities to remember the way that our ancestors and people before us always were in communication with the land and with the earth and the spirits and the energies around us. So I'm just, helping to facilitate those memories that we all have somewhere deep down inside of us.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. One of the things that I really love about your work, at least from the outside, is I appreciate the way you share your experience. To me, it's really relatable. It feels like I know exactly what you're talking about. It feels like your life is a journey. And I really, as a business owner, I always try to find that balance between, expressing what I do in a way that people can understand and be invited in, but also in a way that just feels like natural, like I would be talking to a friend and not like I'm trying to pitch anything. And I really appreciate you have this really gorgeous way of just sharing your journey that I feel like just naturally invites people in on its own. And so you said you started with the blog. I'd love to hear just a little bit more about, I guess, when the pieces started coming together for you as far as the earth work that you do.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting you say that about, kind of just storytelling and sharing the journey, because that is how it started. And as time has gone by, certainly there is plenty of how to do something that I can share, but the real basis of how this began and how I try to continue is just to say, I'm on this journey too. I'm on this journey with you, and I'm learning every day as well. And so, although sometimes some of the stories can seem a little far out or take me a while sometimes to even put the story together, I have to live the experience, which sometimes can take a long period of time before I have that insight or that perspective to share. But that my hope is that in just sharing that, other people can find their own way, even if their story is different than mine. So, so the blog began, actually, it began very secretly. Initially, it really was like nature. I was having these communications and these interactions with the trees in my neighborhood and, plants and mountains and different things. And I just wanted to keep track of it. It just was really interesting the way it was unfolding to me. And I was, there was a lot happening in my dream time and a lot happening in my waking time. And I thought, I just want to remember these things and kind of be able to put pieces together for myself that I might forget, in a few months or a year or something, that something happened or that I had this dream. And so I started it initially. It was just a Tumblr account, very anonymous. And I was just posting my dreams and my shamanic journeys and things like that in that place. And so at some point, I don't remember how long it was. It was maybe a year or so later that I actually moved it over to a blog and continued writing. And some of that was because people were finding what I was sharing and reaching out to me and saying, I'm having this experience too, but I didn't know anybody else was, which was, kind of the place that I was in. And so that really was, the catalyst, I guess I would say, to wanting to share more, was that it was difficult for people to find other people to talk about these things with. And not feel like, is this weird? Is this strange? I think it's so much more normal now, but, it's so funny to think even a decade ago that there wasn't a lot of people talking about these things. Social media wasn't like it is today. And people were stumbling across kind of my personal stories of my journey and what was happening to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are you exploring right now?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm just wrapping up, and I think needing some time to integrate as well what has really been about a 3.5-year journey, but a really intense kind of experience over the past year of working with a particular lineage of my ancestors that first came to me about 3.5 years ago. And at the time, I just thought, oh, there's just some ancestors that want some assistance and crossing over. They belong to a religion that I didn't belong to and didn't know anything about. So I had to learn a little bit about that just to assist them and understand kind of where they were and in their understanding and what they were wanting my assistance with. And then I thought that was it. I thought that was the end of it. And it just really has, I've continued to, I guess, fall down the rabbit hole over the past couple of years, but, in the past year, I actually began working with the Amanita muscaria, mushroom. And through that, I have really learned, that is a real, doorway into reconnecting with ancestors in particular. And that same group of people came in very strongly, wanted me to learn a lot about them and then share the story on my podcast. So I just finished this last season of the podcast and sharing the story. And part of that was in discovering that I had another lifetime in that within my own ancestral line as well, but also within that religion. And there was a lot to kind of unpack there, and just really a lot of energy work kind of surrounding that and really integrating those pieces, which is why I feel like now, like, ooh, I just need a few months to kind of let that all settle after the past year, especially. But yeah, this year I'm hoping to do a lot of work actually here on the land where I live and do a lot of gardening, and a lot of kind of work here is really what I'm being called to do in the physical with the land.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, I've been noticing right now, I feel like a lot of stuff is wanting to come through just very, very 3D right now.
Yes. And feels like a big shift from a couple of years ago. And I think some of it is like whatever has shifted within the timelines over the past couple of years. And I think a lot of the work that we've done, that now there's a lot of, it just feels like, grounding a lot of that energy back into the places that we live, and really take a lot of these kind of etheric ideas, and esoteric explorations that I know I've been on the last few years, and just like bring it into reality. And that's definitely what I'm feeling.
Wonderful. Can you share a little bit more about what that looks like, or if you have a sense of what that means for you, at least on the land that you're on right now, or what your dream is for that?
Yeah. So we actually purchased the land where we live. We have 5 acres in Northwest Montana. I guess we purchased it 6 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, 6 years ago. And we built our house. So we've lived here a little over 5 years now, and it's really been an interesting journey because although I have certainly been working with the spirits since before we purchased it, right from the first time we set foot on it, a lot of it really has been working kind of in other planes of existence with these spirits and doing other things, and a lot of that was happening while we were doing other projects kind of here on the land. When you build a new home and you start, like, everything has to be built from scratch, and so it took a couple of years before we could get the garden built, and it took a couple of more years before we actually have just been building a greenhouse. And so I'm excited to actually be able to grow in that this year and be starting seeds soon and doing those types of
Mhm.
things. But even, the greenhouse was complete, and I kind of tuned in, and it was like, okay, like, what's next? What are we doing with this now? And really, heard the message like, oh, they wanted, a very specific crystal grid to be set up for the greenhouse. And so, been working through that with them. So is some of those types of things, I have some more specific garden beds that need to be planted, lots of, like I say, seed starting, and getting plants ready for the season. But yeah, I'm excited to see how it's going to unfold, and how the spirits here want to engage and participate in the growing of things, and how
Mhm.
that kind of shifts and changes things um, as it comes together. I'm excited to see too.
How do you deal with that process of kind of letting things come together if you've been there for a few years and you're just kind of getting the greenhouse just coming together? Does it drive you crazy not having it leave as
Sometimes
far as long as you want, or what?
I'm a Virgo. I like it all planned out for sure. But yeah, no, it's been really interesting to see how it has unfolded. And I find myself like having more patience and being more open to just discovering how things want to come together in a way that I don't think I used to be. I'm not nearly the hurry to like have it all done and make it all look perfect. Like, I think some of those things are better when you have more time to really spend on the land and to see how the energy flows and see how the water moves and see where animals are using certain things, and trying to kind of take all of that information in and be open to a suggestion maybe you hadn't thought about. And in fact, we had a situation with, part of what we had to do why we couldn't have the greenhouse until now was that there was a lot of additional grading to the earth that had to be done that didn't get done during construction. So we had kind of like a steep hill right off of the back of the house, and so that had to be built up to a flat area, and the greenhouse was supposed to go somewhere else completely. And there was one tree in particular that I had made a big deal about, like, like, this tree cannot be, it's my favorite tree,
I understand that.
I was working everything around this tree, right? Like, the garden was, placed around that tree. I had, other clearing had been specifically to take care of that tree. And we had talked about it with the excavator. We'd, he'd had us mark the trees that we wanted and which ones couldn't stay. And I don't know, my husband and I both like walked away for 15 minutes, and we came back and the tree was gone. And it was, I mean, like, heartbreaking. And, I couldn't even leave the house for the
Mhm.
rest of the day. I just like couldn't even go out there and like look at it and have a conversation with the guy about it. And it was a misunderstanding and whatever. And when I finally could go out there and be there in the space and, kind of connect with the other trees and have a conversation, it was like the tree had known that's what was going to happen, first of all. And when I actually saw how everything was great and how everything had moved around, where the tree was the right place for the greenhouse. Like that was where it was supposed to be. All along. And of course I didn't want to, I was kind of okay, fine. I guess that's where we'll put the greenhouse now. But like, I would have never let that happen. And yet I turned around and left like at the exact time for some reason. Like, why didn't I stand there and make sure that, he didn't take that tree? So it was just sometimes all of those things happen. And in retrospect, I'm like, well, that was where the greenhouse was supposed to be. And that's actually the better place for it. But I couldn't see it until all of those things unfolded. So, it's just, you have to be open to your plans changing and to a certain extent that, the spirits to figure out some of these things. And I think that's part of it, is when you're working with them, there's a lot happening on their plane and in their realm, and a lot of arrangements that are happening and a lot of agreements that are being made that we may or may not be privy to and involved in, and just understanding that they are participating in the process just as much as we are. So the more we can include them, the more we can have, I don't know if I would have called that a happy surprise, but there's been other things that have been happy surprises. This was a sad surprise, but it's I am open to their guidance as much as exerting my own will.
Sure. I relate. I have a not entirely similar, but definitely relatable story on some property that I moved onto in the last year, and it had sat vacant for several years, and it's completely overgrown with stuff. And there's a lot of trash underneath, and this is mixture of like unearthing junk and unearthing like buried treasures that have stories that want to be placed in different areas around the land, trying to find this balance between the wildness and cultivation. And when my partner and I picked where we wanted our fire circle to be, 2 days later, there was not a storm, there wasn't any big wind, but two of the big trees that were right near the fire pit, one of them like split in half and just fell. Just went back there to look at the fire pit one day, and half of the tree was down. I didn't even hear it fall. Again, no storm. And I was like, what the heck? And I was so bummed, because there weren't a lot of like big trees right around on this property. There's a couple, but it was one of the few. But then we realized afterwards, we're like, oh, this was an offering. We had just chosen where the fire pit was going to be. And now we have all of this wood. And that was really beautiful, even though it's also kind of sad.
So sad, so hard for us to take it. Yeah, but what a beautiful story. And and just showing that participation, that they were probably helping to guide you to that spot, knowing that the tree had reached the end of its life or had been damaged in some other way, or whatever the case might be, and they wanted to participate.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you for that insight.
Yeah.
So when did you, was this like when you started to notice the way you were being guided and working with nature in general and spirits in general, was that like a slow realization? Was that a big aha? What kind of started to wake you up there?
Yeah, I would say it was a slow process over a number of years, and partially because it was hard to really find any information. Like when I went kind of looking around, even for books or blogs or whatever, it was, things about how to talk to animals, or, how to that type of thing, but not necessarily like a tree is talking to me. What do I do about that? And so it really was kind of like pulling the layers back and, piece by piece and putting it together. And so and even just understanding like how telepathic communication works, right? Which is really what's happening when we're having these conversations, and understanding that like, depending on how sensitive you are to different types of communication, like you might hear it in your head or you might see it in your mind's eye, but it might also be a feeling in your body. And kind of learning what your own, kind of skill set is for just communicating in that way. And so, yeah, it was initially going out on just daily walks in my neighborhood. And I always say it was like having thoughts or ideas in my head that I didn't put there, but it's my own voice and it sounds like I'm having a conversation with myself, right? Yep. And so it's easy to dismiss, it's easy to blow off. And over time, I started thinking like I wouldn't have thought this up on my own. Like this, I don't know where this would come from. And initially the trees were just asking me to help pick up trash along the road where I was, where I'd be walking in the neighborhood. And so I would try and remember to, bring a bag with me to pick up trash. And it was so funny because anytime I would forget to bring a bag, I would, then see a piece of trash and I'd be like, oh, sorry, guys. Like I forgot I didn't bring a bag to pick up trash today. And like within a few feet, there would be an empty garbage bag on the side of the road, like every single time. And so I was like, they really are, like I am picking this up. This is really what they're saying. Or there would be a piece of trash and I like down an embankment and I'd think like, oh, I don't want to scramble all the way down there and like back up. But if I would do it, I would pick up the trash and turn around and like immediately behind me, there'd be like some big, beautiful feather that like I just walked right past there and it wasn't there. And then, it was there as soon as I picked up the trash. So just like those were some of the really early or like initial kind of times where I realized like, oh, this is a two-way conversation, or we can have a two-way conversation and be in partnership. And I think, in a lot of cases, a lot of these spirits have had either just no interaction with humans at all, or they've had a negative, impression or interaction with humans. And so sometimes even like the picking up trash, I've heard a lot of people have told me that they've had similar experiences. And sometimes I just think, they just want to know, like, can we hear them and will we do it? And do we want to participate with them in this way? And so, I don't like to call it a test, but just more a matter of like, they're getting to know us just like we're getting to know them. And so they're, once they can see you as an ally and a partner, then they, don't ask you to pick up quite so much trash.
Maybe sometimes, other jobs.
Yeah. Sometimes I still get a trash job, but yeah.
You teach other people to hear them and then they can pick up the trash.
Exactly. We're all just doing our job out here. I wish there wasn't so much trash for us to pick up, but that's it just sometimes like just such an easy thing though for us to do that really has a big impact. And it's just you think if you're a tree or a plant, right, and you can't move around, you don't have arms and legs to pick up trash, and you stand there and you look at, the beer bottle on the ground day in and day out, it would bother you too. You wouldn't want to stand there and look at it. So like, how nice that a human with hands and feet and a garbage bag comes along and picks it up. So
yeah.
We're so handy like that.
Oh, that's why we have all of these gifts, because the trees are trying to use our hands.
Right. They're like, you have thumbs if you can pick that up.
Okay. So when this started opening for you and where you are now, tell me about your family. Were they like right along with you for the ride? Was that like a tricky to navigate for you at all? Or was that pretty seamless?
Yeah, it definitely was not something that like we had ever talked about, in the family before, like was, a regular kind of discussion. So like initially, I didn't even want to tell my husband about it for a while. And then finally told him, and he was just like, that seems mostly normal. Like, I don't think that's too weird. So that was good. And so, yeah, I can't remember exactly, like, I don't think it was like a formal conversation. But I think maybe I was like sharing about it on, bits and pieces on social media, on Facebook or something. And then my parents started asking questions. So, but like once they kind of understood what I was doing and what was happening, they've been very supportive. My mom's been in the Earth Tenders Academy literally since day one. Comes to all our calls and participates and does everything along with us. So it's been good. It's been It's been an interesting journey, over the years. Like I say, it used to be, I think, a lot more strange. I think initially a lot of people really didn't know what I was talking about, like talking to nature. That just seemed weird. And now I'm finding, like, if I bring it up, that people will say, "Oh yeah, the tree in my front yard is named Doug," or something. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like, even if you're not like having that conversation, that you've had some kind of exchange with certain, features in your environment, or like a mountain that really calls to you, or, a body of water that you just really love that feels healing to you. Like, I think that's gotten to be more and more just common, that people are sharing about those kinds of experiences that they've had in nature, and it feels more comfortable for people to talk about. So luckily I have not had too many, every now and again you get the odd blog commenter, or the something like that, but for the most part everybody's been very, very open to it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, and I think I agree. I think a lot of that is changing because as we talk about it more, it's just become more normalized, and we keep cultivating a language to discuss it. But I also feel like some of it is just your, like, again, I just feel like the energy and the way you share it is just really neutral. There's not really a lot of charge. There's a teaching in it, but it's not like, at least that's what I appreciate about you, is you're just kind of naming your experience versus like, look over here at this like amazing thing. It is amazing what you do. And also I really appreciate that about you and your voice and how you're sharing your work.
Yeah, thank you. It's non-threatening to people. If like they can think that I'm weird, but it doesn't affect them. They can, move on by if it's not for them. But yeah, I think more people are more curious about it for that exact reason. And yeah.
So then it sounds like some of the moving from the blog to the business side of things kind of happened organically, but I would love to just hear a little bit about what that was like for you, as far as, what was going on in your head during the time, how the ideas came through to you.
Yeah, it was it was a number of years later, and it really was, I was kind of in this place of like, I'd figured out how to kind of have this communication and to do these kinds of things, but I didn't quite have like the skill of channeling really at that, to understand like, oh, I can sit down and like receive this whole clear message. So a lot of things kind of came in spontaneously or in bits and pieces, and I hadn't, figured out like, what are they trying to tell me here? So I was really getting this message about like, well, your work is with nature. And I was like, okay, like, what does that mean? I couldn't get any further than that really. And so I did end up taking a shamanic healer training program, because it was the closest thing I could find really at that time, of just like, well, I feel pretty confident that I don't want to do shamanic healing with people. Like that didn't feel like my calling. But maybe there's something here that will help make that connection. And that's exactly what happened really, was that just through really learning and understanding and practicing just like channeling with spirit, then I was able to say, oh, okay, like that's what the trees and the plants and the spirits of the land are trying to do. And so really, once I kind of understood that and could really connect with them in more active dialogue, they pretty much right away, they were just like, here's how to do a property reading, like start doing those. And so it was very like, it all like just downloaded at once, exactly kind of what to do and how to do it, which of course then I was like, but I don't actually, what do you mean? Like, you told me how to do it, but I had to like, do I know how to do it? And so they really kind of just like encouraged me initially to practice it and to, try it out, like, do some readings for some people. And and then they were like, okay, start offering readings. And so that was really how it shifted over. And that's still what I did for a couple more years before I started the Earthenders Academy, was just offered readings to people while I was still kind of blogging and exploring what was coming through. But the readings are great because it gives you such a wide variety of experiences with a lot of different places. It's really easy to just only talk to the spirits where you live. and kind of get to know them, which is great. But when you're connecting with lots of different places in different parts of the world, you just come across more unusual things. And get to have more and more lessons from the spirits that way. So yeah, that was the process.
Wonderful, wonderful. Were there challenges there for you, or do you feel like that was also just kind of naturally unfolded?
Yeah, I mean, challenges in certainly in the sense of like before every reading, I'm like, what if nobody talks to me? Right? Like, what if no one shows up? What if they don't have anything to say? And every now and again, things will, be a little, not, there's never nothing, but, sometimes, actually a lot of times, and in fact, I haven't been doing readings, last handful of months, because really, a lot of times the spirits really want to engage with the people who live there. Like they're fine to use me as a go-between, but part of how I've ended up kind of in the position of being the go-between, right? That they got the person to, get the reading, was to tell the people, like, you can do this, and or you need to do this. In some cases, spirits will say, well, we're not going to tell you like how to resolve this issue because we want that person to do it with us, and they didn't want me to be involved and do it for them. And so that's really why I've put more focus on showing people how to do it than doing it for them. So I think certainly that's probably one of the biggest challenges is it's a little different than like a mediumship reading, right? You might get where it's just like, oh, I'd like to speak with my grandmother, I have some questions for her, and in some ways it's like that. But with the spirits of the land, it's a lot of they want to be in partnership with us, and they want to be in partnership with the people who share the land with them. And so they would rather start that relationship and work with you kind of step by step through each process than to just send some messages and go away. So yeah.
So is that largely, tell us more about Earthtenders Academy. Is that what you do in there, is help teach people how to cultivate this relationship for themselves?
Yeah, it really it is a whole journey really through. I've tried to include as much as I've learned, not just from the basics, the initial basics of like clearing your own house and setting boundaries with spirits and understanding who the spirits of the land are, what they might want, who you might encounter, those types of things. But really getting into when you do start connecting with the land, like there are so many things. I mean, every time I do something, I come across something else and I'm like, I didn't even know that could happen. I didn't know that works that way. It just like I could never possibly cover it all, but there are certainly things that are common or that I come across a fair amount. Portals are a big one that I like. Most people seem to find their way to me when they're trying to find something out about portals, because I've had a lot of experience with portals. So, just like, how do I open one? How do I close one? How do I move one? Why are they a problem? What, like all of those types of things. But just even working with like time and timelines and, different, how to build a crystal grid on the land in order to shift the energy on the land, like all kinds of different things. So it really does, if people can kind of go through it from beginning to end. Some people I know just want to go in and like get specifically what they want from it. But yeah, all of the kind of content and guided meditations are pre-recorded so people can go through it on their own. But then we gather twice a month live, and we do property readings for each other. So that's kind of how we get to keep practicing our skills and doing that. And while not everybody is interested in actually going out and offering property readings, as a business, I include as much as possible in the course so that people that do want to do that can offer that for themselves as well.
Beautiful, just beautiful. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So you do you have an offer for the folks listening today? Can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yes. So I have a free podcast series called How to Communicate with Nature that is exactly that. So it's 4 episodes of me kind of walking you through the different pieces of kind of where in in the plains? Do these spirits of the land exist? How do we engage with them? How do we engage with them safely? And who are they? What kinds of things might they want to talk to you about? And then just kind of getting started on how you might be able to do some healing work with places where either you're feeling the energy needs some assistance, or you have a specific, that a lot of people come to me and say, I have this park that I go to and I walk in all the time. The water keeps asking me for help, but like, what does that mean? I don't know. Help how? What do I do? So we kind of, go through just initially some of the things that you might be able to do for places like that. So that is all available for free.
Perfect. And we'll be sure to include the link for that in the show notes here so that you guys can grab that and get involved with Amy's work. Amy, thank you so much for being here and taking the time. So fun to talk to you, and I would love to do it again sometime.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is great. I really appreciate you reaching out.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Welcome to today's Member Query episode, where we explore questions about spiritual paths, intuitive gifts, growing a spiritual business, and shamanism. Do you have a question for us? Send us a DM at Holton Healing Arts.
This message is from one of our Instagram users, and the question is how to reclaim your power after you've been hurt. And the first step, of course, is knowing you're in a pattern and exiting the pattern. The next step is to end the game of blame. So you need to know where you are to do this. So for example, if you've already exited this hurtful relationship or pattern or place, congratulations, you've done a ton of the work, and I hope that you're giving yourself some gratitude. From there, then we start to move into the healing and the forgiveness. So in order to do this, we need to drop the blame. That means we're either blaming them or we're blaming ourselves. And to do that, you have to know where you are in your process. So what helps here is to know that you will both need to go through the negative emotions and the positive emotions, and which ones have you gone through and which ones haven't you gone through. For example, if you haven't actually gotten angry yet, if you've only been in compassion and understanding, then you need to get angry. If you've been in anger the whole time, then it is time to start to take a look at compassion and experience understanding. And from here, it's counterintuitive because we're afraid if they aren't to blame, then we are. But when we can actually back away and see the situation from all sides, from the teaching and from the path that you are on, then we can begin to see why it happened, what we needed to learn, and then we can actually begin the forgiveness process, not just forgiveness to the other person, but most importantly, forgiveness with the self. And this is how you begin to reclaim your power.
Have you been hearing the call to expand your spiritual gifts and step into your next level of conscious leadership? If you're a coach, healer, or a spiritual leader, you can learn more about Shaman School and growing your spiritual business on our website, holtonhealingarts.com, or send me a DM at Holton Healing Arts. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit. If you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support